Thanks for letting me present to you today. I appreciate the opportunity, enjoy it. Let's go on here. Before I begin with some nuts and bolts, or non-nuts and bolts, some overview parts of it, I just want to clarify some of the issues that I find come up about what the new Section 508 refresh covers. And so one of your new terms that we're bantering around in the industry is the ICT acronym, and it stands for Information Communications Technology. That's a big difference between the new Section 508 and the old one, in that this term, so broad, no longer limits us to just narrow wording like web-based information. It means anything that is basically a form of communication that is digital. So it can cover, it's a very broad term, think about it, what on your desktop or what do you do during the day that is not part of ICT, that is not a digital or electronic form of communications. So it's not just websites anymore by law, by definition. It's also including all of your documents, your social media, just about anything else that you're going to be doing digitally. The new ICT also covers all your public-facing materials as an agency and anything that is created by your contractors working on your behalf, not the contractor corporate materials, but the stuff that they do for your agency under contract. Grant recipients are also being pulled in under this if they've received a grant from HHS or any of our other agencies. And 9 forms of non-public facing ICT. So think of these as more like the personnel management documents that your agency uses in order to communicate with you as an employee. So all forms of ICT, regardless of the file format or its method of distribution, are covered with this. Everything in it. Another key thing that changed with the new refresh was the specific definition to include more people with more disabilities, a broader coverage of this law for the people who are the end users. So now, again, it's not focused merely on our more commonly associated accessibility disabilities such as blindness and low vision, but also bringing in our cognitive disabilities, learning disabilities, neurologic disabilities, etc. So that makes our job very critical in that we really do have to make our documents in such a way to a specified set of parameters for our PDFs or any of our documents, so that all of the technologies that are used by all of this group of people can interact with that document and become fully functional with it. Luckily, we do have accessibility standards which make this possible. And think of the standards as being the set of the rules of the game. We've all decided that this is the way we're going to be working in this particular realm, and no matter what the technology is, whether it's a screen reader for someone who is blind or has low vision, or it is the same screen reader but is used by someone with a reading disability and has the material, his textbooks or her textbooks, voiced out to him for class, it doesn't matter what the assistive technology is, they all will be working from the same set of standards and making the document work for their intended audience, figuring out the mechanics of it. So one set of standards that's going to be covering all uses and all stuff. Access board, I'm sure most of you have already heard about the access board by now. If you want to read the regs, that's where they are, accessboard.gov. By the way, every once in a while I run into someone who doesn't recognize that or doesn't know that the United States Access Board is a U.S. federal agency. It's not a nonprofit. PDFUA is a nonprofit organization, but the Access Board is a government agency. So now let me get to the main part of what I'd like to talk about today, and this is strategies for you to be able to deploy Section 508 within your workplace. How do you make it work? It can become daunting, and I'm sure many of you in this room have sat there and said, oh my God, how are we going to get this to work? It's going to be a nightmare. We've got so many documents that are created on a daily basis. We have billions of legacy documents in our own agency's archives. What do we do? How do we get over this hurdle? So here are the main things that I'm going to be covering now. How documents are made accessible, what to do about your legacy docs, what some of the things that do, who are the people involved and what are the tasks that they do, your software tools and training that are needed in this. So where to begin? PDF documents are made from some other program, not Acrobat. Rarely do we launch Acrobat and say, make me a PDF. The content comes from someplace else. That someplace else is called an authoring program or a source program, and its document, like your Microsoft Word document or your PowerPoint presentation, is called the source document. So some buzzwords just to get off the bat. You make the content someplace else, and through some process, either through within that particular program or a plugin that's been added or some other service from up on the web, you're going to make a PDF from that source document. It's that conversion that is really the key point. How that document is converted to the PDF determines, number one, if it's going to be accessible at all, and number two, to what degree is it going to be accessible? Is it going to meet all of the requirements that we commonly recognize as making that PDF accessible, or is it going to fail on one of those points or more? So we get down to a mantra here that works. Since the majority of our content, and I don't care where it's going to in the end, up on the web or it's going into SharePoint content management system, being ported into desktop publishing like InDesign, wherever it's going to be ending up, it usually begins with Microsoft Word. People launch that program and begin typing, and that's where our accessibility begins, with the first author of that program, of that document. It begins with the first word written in Word. We've learned from working with a lot of different people that if we start off on a good foot, if we make that source document the correct way before we export to PDF, it itself is going to be accessible, which is kind of another part that's covered by our Section 508. And will also more likely convert to an accessible PDF too, more likelihood to do that. So one of the things that's needed for your office is latest version of software, latest and current versions of your Microsoft Office, Adobe InDesign, if that's what you're going to be using, and also your Acrobat software or whatever the tool is that you're going to be using to convert to the PDF. Without the latest versions of your software, you're missing an awful lot. You are not going to be getting a solid, accessible conversion. And that leads to a PDF that's kind of in terms of accessibility, and now it has to go through remediation as a second phase of this. To me, that's a waste of everybody's time and definitely everybody's budget dollar. So by working with the latest software, you're getting a better construction. I won't say it here because in terms of software companies, I've worked with a lot of them, and I know one of the terms they don't like us people to use is the concept of bugs in their software. The lawyers come at us and say, don't say that, there's nothing wrong with our software. But let's just say they enhance it and they give us new and better and improved features. How's that for a workaround? It does do that, and we do actually get new features in these tools. Both Microsoft and Adobe and the other companies are working to bring us better tools so that we'll get the job out more efficiently. So here's the process that makes it work. Now I'm talking about the documents you're creating from this day forth. We're going to wait for just a minute. We'll talk about legacy documents. But from this day forth, let's do the job right. Let's not make a broken PDF that then has to go through the second remediation phase. Let's keep it as best as possible. Current software of all your authoring programs. Train your staff. When was the last time you had a course in Microsoft Word? Was it in the last 5 years? Huh? I don't see any hands up. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's time for a refresher. Not a big deal. We're not talking about days worth of things, but anywhere from 3 hours to 6 hours is usually enough to fill you in on the new tools and new ways of using Word to do it, and all your programs like that. Another key strategy, build accessible templates so that all the staff in your particular department or division have it ready to go. They just go, boop, plop their content in. It's a no-brainer. They can, of course, write as much as they want. They click the button, make a PDF, and we've got a decent PDF coming out of that. It's a very low-cost, highly effective way to turn around the documents in your agency. Train your staff in what makes a PDF accessible. which means they become at least the first review of the PDF. They wrote the content, they exported it to PDF, now they look at the PDF and go down a simple checklist for the key points. Because if those key points aren't made, you don't have any accessibility at all. There's nothing to hang the accessibility onto. So we have to have some key things built into PDF, and that should become their responsibility to do that. If they have a problem with it, it's time to go for help for it, but get that done. And then, well, there's where the help is. Have experts available on those tough files. Not every file can be done the same way. There are guidelines that run across all of our documents, but some documents are just a little tougher and rougher than others. And that's where you need someone to be able to go and advise, what's the best way of handling this? How can we make it as accessible as possible? That could be a team inside your agency or department that becomes your own in-house gurus, or external consultants that give you that advice on there. It's not difficult to do. It's really not. It's really just learning how to use Microsoft Word and your other software tools the way you probably should have learned years ago. But it's also not intuitive. You're not going to figure this out on your own. You've got to have some guidance in there from some way. But I will say this, the learning that you do on how to do that is going to last the rest of your career, because this is not going away anytime soon. These are processes and techniques that you'll be using from now to the end of your career, especially if you're in government. Other benefits here. It's going to reduce your publishing time, the time it takes to get that document from the core initial creation of it to the final published version, the total cost it takes to get it fully published and fully accessible. It also builds in the assurance that your document is going to be compatible for the long time. We've all seen the technologies just kind of come and go over our careers. How many of you still have a computer with a floppy disk drive? Huh? How many? Okay, so that is exactly something that stayed for the long term. I don't want that happening to my digital documents. So we want that long-term, long shelf life built into it. Accessibility gives that document that long shelf life. Another key thing, this isn't fully addressed with the Section 508 regs, but when you make that source document fully accessible, you're allowing your colleagues, your work colleagues, who do have disabilities and do use assistive technologies to be able to work fully with you on your documents and projects. That's a big plus. Cross-media benefits to all this, it makes it more easily converted into other technologies, moving from Word to InDesign, moving from Word into your content management system like SharePoint, moving from Word into Adobe InDesign for desktop publishing, moving from Word into any other type of technology that you're going to be migrating this to. That's the concept of cross-media publishing. We create that first source file, we create it in such a way that it works not only with assistive technologies used by our clients with disabilities, but also used by all of our different publishing technologies too. It makes the whole thing just work so much faster and easier. There we go on that, sorry. Some of you talk about the safe harbor clause about your legacy documents, so let's take a look at this. It's a huge issue, and it needs to be addressed. It's going to be different workflows on this depending on your agency, the types of documents that are out there. The safe harbor clause that is in the Section 508 refresh is pretty clear, and it says if the document is not compliant as of, well, it just went into effect a few days ago, last week, then it's not compliant, it needs to be brought up to compliance. It also says that if it was compliant as of the turnover date, but you go in and edit it, that it's now lost its grandfathered rights and must now come into full compliance to the new Section 508 standards. So your decision for every single one of your legacy documents comes down to a 3-point decision tree. First of all, do you want to remediate this document? Is it so inaccessible and non-compliant that it needs full remediation? Great, you can remediate, the PDF, but if you can also find the source file, it's sometimes faster and cheaper to find that original Word, PowerPoint, InDesign, whatever it was, Excel spreadsheet that created that PDF long ago, and fix that up and re-PDF it again. You can also refresh and republish it. And refreshing means looking at, do I need to update the content? I mean, are my dates out of line, my data out of date? And bring that up. And some of our agencies are realizing, you know what, we haven't had anybody hit on these files for 5 years. And when they did, it was 1 or 2 hits, maybe by accident from a Google search. And they're removing chunks off of the public website or putting them into a legacy archive version where people can know that they do it, and that they're there, but they will have their own function. When we look at the team players here, it's everybody in your agency is here, from your managers down to your SMEs and designers and web team. No one's left out of it. And just some very common workflows that are in here. A writer goes to a 508 technician who checks it. If you have an editor in there, they're in there too. And notice what they're doing there. Your writer should be going in and definitely know how to style and tag a document. They should also be writing the metadata for it, the alt text, the captions, that kind of subject matter expertise that only they have. We don't really want to have remediators or other people down in the food chain figuring out what the heck that bar chart is all about and what it means scientifically. That's not the place for it. And then if you're working in an InDesign workflow, you just add in the InDesigner here. InDesign is a tough program. It's a great program for what it does, but it also takes a great deal of knowledge and training to get that under your belt for accessibility. Tools and training, everybody needs to have the refresher course in Microsoft Office and a quick refresher, what does an accessible PDF look like? Your graphic designers, your VISs need to have their InDesign training for accessibility in there. And then your document specialists, these are people who are going to go for higher training in this. They're going to know Word inside and out. They're going to know how to take multiple Word documents together, put together a table of contents with it, and merge it all into one accessible PDF. They're high-end users on that. Not everybody needs that training. So as you go down this list here, it starts as quick training down to very extensive training, and at the bottom one they should be getting some certification. I think that's it on my presentation. Did I meet the mark, Duff? Thank you. Thank you. I'm ready for questions. Stump the chump here. Come on, guys, let me have it. Good.
Is there a place we can get your contacts so we can see your PowerPoint? I wasn't able to take notes quickly enough.
Duff, do they have access to our PowerPoint presentations?
The recordings of the presentations will be posted on PDFUA.org. The moment we haven't made provision to post the presentations themselves, but we will look at that, and we'll certainly send out a notice when we do that, along with the video.
That would be helpful.
So that'll go to everyone who's registered? You'll send a notice out?
So, and there are microphones on either side of the stage if you want to use those as well. Otherwise, Debbie, please repeat the question.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. Now a lot of applications are moving towards the cloud. How important is it for them to be FedRAMP?
To be
FedRAMP certified.
FedRAMP certified.
And why I ask that is you say use the latest versions, but the latest versions are not FedRAMP.
Yeah, and that's a problem in that the government is always lagging behind. So we have the requirements that are kind of leapfrogging ahead, but then the other standards, not the standards, but the other requirements are lagging behind there. How do we get them? I think we need to move forward on it and get things a little bit faster on there. I know one thing that I hear from my clients directly is they can't get the appropriation money to actually go out and get the latest version of the software, and it's difficult to do that. So I think we're going to have to work that out government-wide, get a little bit more in tune with the stuff. And as technology changes, your requirements are going to be changing also. I have to confess, accessibility is going to be a moving target for the next few years out, simply because technology is developing, standards are developing, everything. And that's technology, not just the technology we use, but the assistive technologies used by our end users. Anyone else? Saw something over here. Oh, sorry, sir.
The latest update for Office and Word and Adobe, what about other tools like Comic Book, for instance?
You should always keep those up to date too. I'm sure they're happy to hear me say that too on that. But yeah, all of your tools, not just Adobe and Microsoft products, but all your tools that you're using to create it. And if you have some specialized plugin that you have purchased to work in Acrobat or InDesign or even Word to do a particular feature, statistical software often does that for analysis, plugins inside Excel. You need to keep those plugins up to date too. Does it mean more money? Yeah, I'm not going to lie about it, it does, but the money's going to come one way or another from your agency. Either you're going to spend it on keeping your software up to date, which is a cost, but that has a long-term benefit, or you're going to be spending it in remediating time and labor or outsourcing for making your documents fully accessible. Where do you want to spend the money?
Thank you.
Question?
Talk mostly about static, or what I would consider a static document. You can create it in Word, generally it's considered pretty static. What about documents that are delivered interactively, like from the Social Security office or something like that are specific to me, or specific to her, and they're not being generated by Word, they're being generated by other authoring tools that are handling very high volume interactive.
He's asking a question about other tools that generate their interactive, like on Social Security's website you're talking about,
Well, the actual PDF itself. that
was
would
generated on the fly.
Available to me in a portal, for instance.
And we have companies that are on board with this also. One of them is here today. iTex, you guys here? Maybe in the other session. But they create the on-the-fly PDFs. So you're taking a piece of content out there. It's interactive, so it's been customized for that particular user. I want to see if I'm up on a corporate website, I want to see all the blue widgets, not the red widgets, and you want a PDF of it, that kind of generation. And Adobe is also working on their server software to do this. So all of those companies should be in line with accessibility, and it is possible to pull data from a database. We do this in a static format, but it can be dynamic too. To pull it out of a database, create a PDF or a layout or any other form of a document, and make that fully accessible.
We actually do it as well. One of the problems we've run into is like after we create all the tests, we might look at the document in Acrobat to verify that it's correct. And oftentimes the error message, if we get one during development, it's extremely difficult to figure out what it really means. Adobe, the Acrobat tool doesn't really give you that specific. It just tells you it failed.
Yeah. I can't say much about that. But yeah, sometimes the error message we all get in all software programs are cryptic. We're working with companies to make their software a little bit more informative so that when you get an error message, you can figure it out. Or at least have a good chance of figuring it out. But yeah, it is a problem, debugging. We spend a lot of time doing that. Duff, I think it's time for me to...
No,
Oh, no? Okay,
keep going. I just
okay.
want to make sure I give people a microphone so we can all hear the question.
Way up at the top.
Hi, sorry.
Think you could use the microphone down the...
How's the weather up there?
Pretty well.
Okay.
Good, it's nice and warm. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it can, thank you.
So I'm with an agency that uses Word 2016, and we use templates and style guides. We run the accessibility tool in Word, then we PDF, and then we run the accessibility tool again in Adobe. And we get a number of mistakes. And what we're finding is the accessible Word document doesn't translate. Those tags are not translating into Adobe.
That's where training comes into place, and it's partly you're working with multiple software programs from different companies. It's the original Word document from Microsoft, and Microsoft has its own version of going in and checking for accessibility. It's not perfect. You pull it into Acrobat after the PDF is made and run its checker, and you get a whole separate set of requirements or errors coming up. That's not perfect. You could run it through any of the other third-party tools out there. Common Look, our folks from Common Look are here today, or PAC, or there's a couple of more out there that you can run and run checkers on. And you can have a live human being look at it and also determine where the failure points are in this. Everybody is going to come up with a different theory. Part of it is software development lag. And I work with software companies all the time, and there is a lag time between when we have the standard versus how long it takes them to build to that standard in their software program. It is not an overnight occurrence. Some of these things I've been waiting for a couple of years, and I understand from working directly with the developers, software developers, that's a problem. But, yeah, that's why a human being has to come in here. You have to do your stages of checking this. In Word, check it. In Acrobat, check it. Third-party tools, check it. Human being, check it. And there you're
Do
going
you
to...
still recommend that the source, the Word document, be the source, or do we fix the changes in Acrobat?
If you fix the changes in Acrobat, it's either way. It depends on your document and your workflow. If you fix them in Acrobat, it's a one-time deal, right? What if that document needs to be edited? You're going to be doing it all over again. That's right. So if you think that this content is going to change, that may not be the right strategy or the best strategy for you. So pulling it into Word. If you're having problems with your Word document, I encourage you to check with my informational session coming up later today, because we're able to help people get Word documents, especially your basic ones, out pretty flawlessly today. Yes, sir. Oh.
Follow-up question. So Microsoft invests a lot of money in publishing 508.
Let's hope they do.
Yeah. And then you guys are all checking with Acrobat. Which standard's right?
That's an excellent question. I wish I had an answer for you.
I could help you with that a little bit.
Yeah.
There isn't a standard for Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a compliant Word file. So the accessibility checking is very rudimentary in Word.
Yeah.
PDF has PDFUA, black and white, either accessible or it isn't. You can't base your strategy off of trying to have an accessible Word file. It's just a baseline approach. And all of the guidance is around trying to set something up for a better PDF, but you can't generate a compliant PDF from Word. Full stop.
I think you need to take my class, Adam, I swear.
Or you get to take mine.
So,
Doesn't make any sense.
what's that?
One of it, are you gonna do your editing in Word and try and make it compliant to the PDF standards?
Yeah, as much as
So
possible.
Word,
There
you
is,
can make a Word
the
document compliant.
the bottom line is, at this stage in the industry, there is no, unless you have a very simple document, text and headings and graphics and such, it's probably going to need some finesse in Acrobat at this time. And that's because our software tools are lagging behind the standards at this point. They are getting better, each edition. I'm just really proud at what,
Stop pointer for the standards so that they can catch up.
Duff, are we going to have a stop point of our standards?
So PDFUA was published in 2012, and there are software applications are now capable of validating against PDFUA. As Adam said, Word makes Word files which have nothing to do per se with PDFUA. When the Word file is output to a PDF file, the intention is that you can generate a PDFUA file. Where the drag is, as it were, is that Microsoft is continuing to work on developing conversion from Word to PDF that will produce, if you did the job right in a Word file, that would produce a fully conforming PDFUA file on output. So the standard is already fixed. The software companies are still working to
out the
catch up
bugs.
with it, and they need your support, shall we say, in doing that, by which I mean your complaints. That this piece of software is not helping me do this. And in many cases, as Bevi has said, this boils down to training on the part of the user, because the software can do a pretty good job at this point. But the standard is fixed at this point. We have all the standards, but PDFUA is here already.
If you would like to register your suggestions to both Adobe and Microsoft, just Google Adobe wish list or Microsoft wish list, and you'll be taken to their public forum where you can do that. And if you do log in, you can log in anonymously. You don't have to mention who you are, your agency. But please let them know that you are a U.S. federal employee that's required to meet Section
Yes.
508 standards, because that is a hard message. There's been some misunderstanding there in these companies. Let's
So
leave it at that.
It's now 10 o'clock. We want to take one more brief question if we can, and then quickly get a coffee break, and we'll be starting up the next session very, very soon. Please.
I'm not sure this is going to be a quick question. My agency, we are using Google a lot. So I find if someone has put their document in Google Slides, anything Google, I'm in trouble. I cannot easily make it accessible. I'm like, please, I know you want to collaborate by using Google, but once it goes in that environment, it changes it to like Japanese fonts that Microsoft doesn't understand. It literally doesn't translate.
And
What do you
it's
do?
also not fully accessible just in everything. So if you ever like to hear how Google Docs works for someone who is blind, just go visit a Google Docs website with someone using a screen reader, and the four-letter words will start flying.
That said,
It's up to Google.
there is a
It's up to Google.
plugin for Google Docs called Grackle,
Grackle.
Grackle, and it does produce a tagged PDF file from a Google Doc. And their objective is PDFUA conformance, so I do
But
encourage you to check it out.
That's converting the Google Doc to a PDF.
To a PDF, not
what-
about making the Google Doc
Yeah.
accessible, about making an accessible
We
PDF
can do
from
that.
Google Doc.
Google needs to hear about your complaint and suggestion.
So what do we do in the meanwhile? I want to just tell people, no, Google, you just can't do it.
Personally, I would not have advised your agency to move to Google Docs
Yeah,
at this time.
if they need to alter
At this
accessibility.
time.
Yeah, we've run out of room and space on our own network, so Google, more
Yeah.
and more stuff is going there. Okay. Thank
Good
you.
luck. Let us know
Yeah.
how it happens.
Okay, folks,
Thank you so much.
thank you, Bevi.
Thanks, Doug.